I was reading this morning, like the amount of dry powder on the sidelines right now is like, I think 2.5 trillion and worldwide. That's a lot different than it was in '08 in the financial
Oh,
crisis.
totally.
There's so much capital sitting out there. What do you think is going to happen to that capital? Right now, they're earning 5% plus 6% at a bank or a high yields like accounts or buying a bond even. You can buy a 10-year bond at 4.5% today. It's like they're going to sit on there. But at some point, it's going to all flip over. And I think that's just the difference between '08 and now. There's just a lot of dry powder on the sidelines.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Reports. Today, we are back in the studio and we got some sunshine in the month of November here in San Diego. And I am very excited because we got our monthly Beers and Deals real estate meetup 2 nights here in downtown San Diego. And I got a special guest today. I got someone who is investing in self-storage units. I don't think I've had a guest on yet that is investing in self-storage units. I got my man, Marc Kuhn. Marc, welcome to the show, brother.
Dude, thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be down in San Diego when I'm from North Dakota, so
Yeah, man.
it's a great place to be. It's beautiful.
Dude, we got you all the way out here from North Dakota. What's
Yeah.
the temperature out there right now?
Oh, probably mid-40s.
Mid-40s? That's
Yeah.
not too bad.
We had snow on Halloween though, so
Wow.
it wasn't as good.
What's the average during the wintertime, like daytime and nighttime average? Let's say January, February.
Oh, probably 0
Wow.
as the high.
And does the sun go down? What about the low?
Yeah, the low negatives, maybe negative teens.
So 0 is the high.
Yeah, single digits is
That's
could be
crazy.
good day.
Well, I don't even think I've ever experienced that type of like coldness before. Like, what do you have to wear layers wise when you go outside?
Oh man. I try to use the heated seat option and the heated steering wheel
And the-
option a lot in the vehicles, but I probably underdress, but I'm not outside working in construction. So, but you gotta, the Canadian goose down coats, if you've seen the little like red patch, if you were from there, you would know what I was talking about. But these are like $1,400 coats
Damn.
that literally people buy, and you can sweat in them if you were sitting indoors. So they're very warm, but I don't know. I probably underdress and
Dude, you guys would probably laugh at me. I was driving to the gym this morning. I think it was like 61 degrees outside. I was driving to the gym this morning. I had my seat warmer on.
I said,
No
Jen,
joke.
she's out there in a dress just working at freaking 8 a.m. this morning. I'm like, really? It's like, it's kind of cold out.
That's
Yeah.
funny, dude. And the sun goes down early in the wintertime up there. You guys are further north, right?
Yeah.
What time does the sun set?
Gosh, by 5 o'clock, it could be dark.
Okay, that's not too bad.
I mean,
It's dark at 5 o'clock this time of year in San Diego because of the daylight savings time.
Yep. And we follow daylight savings as well.
You do?
So it probably similar.
Okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha. So, dude, tell me about self-storage, man. Like with self-storage right now in this climate, what are some of the benefits of investing in it?
Yeah. I think self-storage as a whole, like you just look at, and I know you talk about the market and a lot of your, a lot. Anyway, I think self-storage does good in the good times and the bad times. So meaning like, let's look at the last recession, the financial crisis of '08. What was the best product type out of there? Well, it was self-storage. And why? Well, I think it made it. There was not many sales of self-storage properties. And I think in recessions in general, people need to store things. Usually they're going to move in together, you know what I mean? Like reduce their cost of living. Well, they still got to store their stuff. But I think in self-storage, you can fluctuate things every 30 days. You don't have as much regulation. Think about multifamily, or I know you have boutique hotels. I don't know if there is any regulation. There's probably regulation coming, right?
Mhm.
Well, really storage hasn't been hit with regulation. And where I can adjust the monthly rents from, say I'm building a new facility and the market rate is a couple $100 a unit.
Okay.
Well, I could come to the market and go $50 a month. Brand new facility. What's going to happen? It's going to fill up instantly. Well, then what can I do in the next 30 days? I can jack the rents right to 200. But what you find out in storage is that it's very sticky. You'd think everyone would move out. Well, no, 70% of the people actually stay there. You know what I mean? So it's just it's something that you can adjust very quickly, increasing your revenue. And if your occupancy goes over 90%, just keep jacking the rents a little bit. And until your occupancy goes too low to where you don't like it, right? And so I just think I like the adjustability, and I love the boringness of it, right? Like I'm like the Cody Sanchez believer that boring things, but make money. I've invested in lots of fancy things, and they're shiny, they're bright, and they're beautiful, but most of the times it's the boring stuff that's always made me the money.
Yeah. Well, and it's evergreen as well. There's never going to be a replacement for two things: a place for people to live and a
Right.
place for people to sleep, but also a place for people to store their belongings. There's never going to be a technology that supersedes that, at least in the foreseeable future.
Right.
And so I also love that, like you alluded to, when people move or, rents go up, it's kind of an afterthought because the prices for these storage units are not so crazy in terms of like a percentage of someone's income or disposable income to where you pump the rents a little bit, or maybe they're not even using it.
Yeah.
They just have stuff in there, like they're just forget about it. It's not something to where people are going to move out right away. It's like, hey, I'll come back to this later when I have time. It's almost like a overthought, right?
Yeah. I think people just pay it to pay it, and they don't want to move their stuff, and they just keep paying it. I like the collection of rent too. It's just via credit card. Usually it's automated processes within storage. And storage, it's so light in the management world. You don't even have to, gone are the days where you need to have a little 20 by 20 box where someone needs to run the whole storage facility. You don't even need that anymore. Most of the things you can automate. Literally, you can get in through the locking system, with your phone. Some of the apartments and boutique hotels, you got automated Bluetooth technology. And then, hey, when you don't pay your rent on the first, guess what? You get locked out of your unit.
Right.
Until you pay the late fee to get back in the unit. So I think just automation has helped the self-storage industry reduce.
How do you guys treat delinquencies in the self-storage space?
Yeah. So I think the same as multifamily, or the same as most things. You get them a grace period where if it's after the first, it's late because you can pay with your credit card, right? We'll pay the fees to get the cash, and then then they got to pay a late fee, and then after the fifth day they got to pay more of a late fee. So there's really no grace period with it. We either want the money or we want you out.
Yeah. Okay, so after the late fee or the late period, right, and they don't pay, what's the next step after that?
Basically, we would lock the unit.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now what if some of these folks are like, I don't care, I'm not going to come back for my stuff, then what?
Yeah, so 57 days after they were to say that, and they don't come back and get anything, they don't pay their bill, you can actually put we've all seen storage wars, right? You can post it online, and there's auction companies that'll come in and do all the work. You'll collect, I think, 50% of whatever they get. And then you vacate the unit, someone cleans it out, you clean it up, rent it out to the next person.
Gotcha. And what's the delinquency rate on average?
See, I'm going to term this luxury storage, which is basically, instead of a 10 by 10 storage unit, I'm in 800 to 1,000 square foot storage units. So these things are 18 by 50.
So these are massive.
These are bigger units. Yeah, these are not just for boat RVs, but it's small contractors. Maybe someone that can't afford a shop space yet.
You could put a podcast studio in one of those spaces.
Yeah, and I think I should do that in that way.
There you go.
But that would be awesome. But I just, the delinquency of what we have as a bigger product is even less than self-storage, because if you have a 5x5 and you got a bike and whatever, a couple things in it, you may be more opt to, geez, I'm leaving North Dakota, I'm going to California.
Right.
I'm just going to leave the stuff there, not pay the bill anymore, forget about it, have it. So in these bigger storage units, well, geez, if you got a boat or an RV geez, you got a lot of area to put stuff in. It could be all garbage at the end of the day, but we haven't actually ran into that yet. But I'll make sure that I document that the first time we have that, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of stuff in there.
Right. So delinquency rate with more apartments, they're going to be single digits. Obviously, the A-class stuff and the nicer products, the higher rents, they're going to have lower delinquency on average, generally speaking. And the more workforce housing, C-class stuff, you're going to have a little bit higher delinquency, but it's still going to be single digits. Is it double digits? What are we talking with self-storage? Are we talking mid-teens?
Yeah, I don't think it's mid-teens. I think it would be maybe 10% or less, because like I said, it's people want their stuff. They want to keep their stuff for a reason. People generally are hoarders at this time when they're, they want to keep their stuff, and they don't want to let go of any of it. So your delinquency rates, I'd say 10% or less being, average.
Sure. Okay.
On self-storage. On luxury storage, I'm going to say less than 2%, because bigger storage unit, they're going to clean that thing out before we take it.
Now, what is the biggest risk to self-storage? Is it new supply and new development entering the marketplace?
Yeah, I think so. In COVID, it basically skyrocketed. These occupancies averaging in self-storage were always in the mid to low 80s, and that was pretty good in self-storage, and you could live with that. But all of a sudden, they skyrocketed to mid 90s. Well, they've never seen that in the 50 years self-storage has really been pushed. And so, I think the occupancy levels have been just so elevated for so long. They're finally decreasing a little bit. And now you're seeing all this cutthroat on pricing type thing happen. And the market's just not liking it. Now people aren't developing right now because units per capita, I mean, the biggest threat is, you overbuild a market and then people move away from market. But if you're building and growing markets, California is a great market for storage. Lots of demand here. Not a lot of regulation around it yet. Arizona, any highly populated growing area.
When you say regulation, what do you mean with self-storage?
Controlling rent.
Oh, okay. Rent control. So they'll cap like how much you can increase the rent per year.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
They haven't done that really
in California.
No,
they have not.
You can still fluctuate things as you want. Regulation probably always comes in the future. It seems like it always puts a rein on our investor parade. But
does anyone ever rent like a self-storage unit and just like live in it for a little bit? I thought that'd be like a cheap way to like live.
Yeah. So, well, especially when you're building a bigger storage unit where you can like literally park a RV into.
Yeah.
And then there's an outlet in our storage units.
And there's ventilation and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's heat in the Midwest, where I'm at.
Dude, I would so do that. If I was in a pinch, I would do that before going and sleeping on someone's couch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think, some of these guys put porta potties in them and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
So it is a thing.
I try to use my horse blinders anytime I'm walking past my storage units just because it's like, really? Like,
yeah. But you don't want to kick him out. You're like,
yeah, he's been here for 2 years. He pays his rent on time.
Okay, so
he's good. Yeah, he's good. So I think, but I mean, it's my product in luxury storage is so unique because you got contractor shops, which we call a 20 by 50 with a bathroom and maybe an office in it. That'd be a contractor shop, like floor drain, whatever, a nice area for them to do business out of. Well, mine just basically deletes the floor drains, deletes the bathrooms, and it's just 2 lights ran off a motion detector. You have climate control to a certain point, right?
Wow.
And then, an outlet, 15 amp outlet, and that's all you get in there. But it's half the money.
So this guy that's been living at your unit for 2 years, what does he pay ballpark monthly?
It's about $1 a foot is really what they pay. So if it's 1,000 square foot unit, usually the rent will be.
Wow, that's expensive.
Yeah.
$1,000. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I mean, I imagine a 1-bedroom apartment out there you could probably rent a 1-bedroom apartment out there for the same price, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You can get a 1-bed for that. Yeah. And so it's just.
So why does he do that then?
What's that? Well,
what's the advantage of living in a storage unit?
Well, because we're right now next to a trucking facility. So I think he just plans on trucking and then living there while he's not in his truck driving. I'm not really sure, but I hope he's not living in there, honestly. Like, I don't think he's living in there, but why is there a porta potty in there at the bare minimum? I don't know how much you're working on your truck.
What was the first time that you realized, like, oh, this guy might be living here? Like, what made you realize that?
Well, I don't know. He's there an awful lot, I guess. No, maybe maybe I should just turn him into the manager on site, so then I don't have to pay anyone to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in any facility, there's people that live in mini storage units, right? Like they lock themselves in there, and I have plenty of buddies around the States that, they'll live in there because it's $100 a month. And as long as they can make the rent on the first, they can still live there for another 30. But most of these facilities know with like a gate access that you're in there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're developing a storage facility right now. What are some of the barriers to entry in terms of building and developing a self-storage facility? Yeah.
So I think development in general is you have to have either the capital to do it or the ability to raise capital. And so storage in general is a debt-heavy investment because of the revenue, say it makes $100,000 of revenue. Well, their expense ratios are usually 25 to 35%. Let's just call it 30%.
It's pretty lean because you guys just have a on-site person, like a front desk, and that's it, right?
Not even that. It's all automated.
It's all
software.
You don't even have a front desk.
Right. Yeah. No one really needs to talk to anybody.
Wow. Last time I went to a self-storage facility. I think I rented one for a couple months, and this is probably 8 years ago. And they had a front desk person. But so you're saying a lot of these new facilities that with the technology, you don't even need that.
Yeah. There's most facilities built today don't even have a person running it.
Okay.
And they really don't need to. Everything's automated. How you get in the building, how you get to your unit. If you don't pay the bill at your unit, you get locked out of it. Say it's a multi-story, probably more familiar with you in the South here. And you see all these big multi-story buildings. It's just everything's a key fob. You don't pay the bill, you don't get in the building.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Yeah, you don't need to. And usually when you call somebody, it's not even the local guy. It'll be a VA from somewhere that's
Mhm.
answering the call service to run the facility.
Right.
So many ways to automate it. But yeah, say, $100,000 income, 30% expense ratio, it's just a debt heavy investment. And right now, with debt being as high as it is, I mean, we're talking 8% debt right now. These facilities are dropping, and it can't support the debt and the prices the cap rates they were at. But if debt comes down like it did, like a lot of these guys who owned self-storage right before COVID, I mean, absolutely exited for a monster amount. Because when debt dropped to 4%,
Yeah.
those guys,
They were exiting at a
oh
low
my
cap rate.
gosh, yeah. And they own lots of facilities now today.
Mhm. Is seller financing common in this space? If you love real estate investing, passive income, and tax benefits, but don't have the time, my company, Summers Capital, is buying boutique hotels right now. We source the deals, we renovate the properties, and we even handle all the day-to-day management, making it truly hands-off for our investors. If you want to learn more to see if we can help you, visit summerscapital.com/invest to book a call with our team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show.
I would say right now it would be, if you can find, so it's kind of an interesting industry. It's about 50% corporate and it's about 50% mom and pop shops. So right now is probably not the best time to be developing, although there's certain markets that still need development done, but you can find these mom and pops that want to retire. And most of the time, the moms and pops, they don't build enough units. They will only build, let's say, 100 units, small units on one lot. Well, it's not enough to get a corporate attention. So a lot of times people build too small. They don't get to the right buying group, for your exit strategy. And because those facilities are harder to run, they just are. Automation is helping us though do that more efficiently on smaller complexes.
Yeah, sure.
So,
what about can you assume these loans in the self-storage space? Are a lot of these loans assumable?
I don't know. I don't think banks are allowing anything assumption wise. I haven't, that used to be something that would happen all the time, but I don't see a lot of assumption loans. Like banks are getting tight themselves right now just because the debt market and the word assumption is just something that they don't do anymore.
Obviously it's hyper local, but are you guys seeing the rent growth kind of slow down right now because of the interest rate environment and all that? Or are you guys still seeing a lot of rent growth?
The Midwest is, because I have friends in Arizona and California, and we are lagging. Like the Midwest as a general is always lagging what you guys are doing out here. So you guys were booming a couple of years ago. We were actually not booming that much. It was growing,
right?
But we're still growing. You know what I mean? Like we're lagging. So we're just, you guys kind of come quickly. It happens around here. It seems like rent growth, and then we kind of ride a steadier curve. And, I think just with that happening, that's why it's a great place to park money is in the Midwest.
Absolutely.
There's all sorts of guys from California that go and park money up there. It's a great diversification tool because where you guys are 5 caps, 6 cap, I don't know what the cap rate is around here now. What is the cap rate?
For self-storage?
Well,
I don't know for self-storage, but I can say for multifamily out here, especially nicer multifamily, the Class A stuff could be, around 3%. Right. And then, more like B, C class, you're looking at maybe 4 and maybe 5% in some of the more inland areas of San Diego. But yeah, generally speaking, it's a low cap rate environment. Hotel stuff here, generally speaking, is going to be anywhere from 6, 7, 8% cap rate.
Okay.
Self-storage, I have no idea.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure that the self-storages are low as well. They usually follow kind of Class A multifamily. That's generally where it'll run just because it's such an easy asset to own. I think Class A multifamily is easy to own too because the property supports good management, right? And it's easier to own. So, our cap rates though are 7, 8, 9. Where yours are generally lower. So it's a better place to park money. You'll make more cash flow. Obviously, your appreciation is much higher down here.
Yeah,
over the long run. So I think if you're from California or you're from the South, it's a great place to park money up north, and that's generally where we see investors come from is they want to diversify into the Midwest and have that steadier flow.
I was going to ask you, competition out there in North Dakota, do you guys have a lot of out-of-state investors that try to come in there, or is it mostly just local buyers?
Yeah, I think there will be groups from California and everywhere that'll come up there and buy things. And it's just because you can buy a house up there for, $350,000 brand new.
Yeah.
I don't know what it costs down here. Astronaut, quite a bit more than that, of course. And so I think they go up there and park money. They buy entry-level homes. They'll buy a bunch of them, kind of a build-to-rent model, and they'll just buy and sit on that. Yeah, there's all sorts of investors that'll go up there and park money.
Really?
North Dakota,
Okay.
South Dakota.
I've done a lot of investing out of state in different markets. But what I find interesting is here, specifically like in Southern California, I feel like out-of-state investors don't come in here.
Oh,
It's really like the only competition here in Southern California are people that are local. So I mean, you could see that as a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But I do find that interesting. Here in Southern California, it's almost all local folks, and there's even local folks here in Southern California that are like, I don't buy in California. I
So
had
where do-
someone on the podcast recently, and he was like, "Yeah, I only invest out of state," and he lives here in San Diego.
oh.
So it's interesting.
Where does he invest then? What did he say?
A lot of like inland markets, Midwest markets. He does a lot of like multifamily residential stuff, and so I find that interesting. But here's the thing. I think there's opportunities in all markets,
Yeah.
in all asset classes.
Right.
You just got to get good at one of them.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's opportunity in all of them.
Yep. I completely agree with that. I think if you're going into the Midwest, you're looking for cash flow. I think you're not going to find that down here unless you're 50% levered or less. You know, you're just not going to see a lot of cash flow. But you'll get that greater appreciation.
And you'll get a bigger lever of value add for each additional dollar that drops your NOI because of the lower cap rate environment. Because, what's a cap rate at the end of the day? It's a market's opinion of risk-adjusted return. And so the buyer, if you're looking at two markets, let's just say Cincinnati, right?
Yep.
Cincinnati was one of the first markets. It was the first market that I bought
Oh.
multifamily in.
Yeah.
And, cap rates are much higher in Cincinnati than they are here in San Diego. And so if you just compare those two markets, an investor is willing to accept lower cash flow in an area like San Diego versus Cincinnati because they know they're going to make so much more in appreciation long term. Now, an investor going into Cincinnati is going to demand more cash flow because they know there's going to be less appreciation long term. And that's really what drives these cap rates,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I think California is like one of the best places you can make money, like as flipper or, and value add, like you said, how you can get a 4 cap on your value. How do you build more value than that, and the Midwest, I don't think you can value add there too, but it's definitely not to the same degree.
Mhm.
Usually it's harder to
But
get your dollar value out of that.
For sure. But there's a lot of benefits of going into a lot of these Midwest markets. As long as these markets have, employment growth, good population growth, steady fundamentals, like some of these Midwest markets, I personally wouldn't go into. So like, the ones that have declining population growth, that scares me. So like Detroit, areas like Cleveland.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in those kind of markets because at least if I'm going to go into a market, I want to know the population's growing. It doesn't need to be growing rapidly, but as long as it's growing 1% to 2% a year, like I feel good about that, right?
Yeah.
There's more people moving there than moving out. That's a good thing, but you go into areas like Detroit where if you look at the Detroit population over the last 40 years, it's declining.
Right.
That's scary to me. You
Yeah,
know
I
what
know.
mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
People are moving out.
It's funny too. I was just looking at this in the markets, and they said that all the markets that were booming are now hurting, right? Like your Arizonas and the places like California that were all this outflow, New York and all these places. I think even Detroit was in there that they're actually steadying or growing in rents. So I don't know how that is or why that is, but I think it's just maybe they're lagging. I don't know. Some kind of lagging
maybe
indicator.
certain markets within, sub-markets within Detroit. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I know there's people that say like, there's a lot of people like flooding out of New York and areas like, California. But I will say, yes, there's people leaving California. But if you look at the household income of the folks that are leaving versus the people that are coming in, the people that have low household income are leaving, right? And the ones that are making good money are coming in. And so when that happens, that's what really drives sale prices, but also rent prices up as well.
Gotcha. Wow. I guess I didn't know that. You hear all sorts of news, and they can make a headline shape however they want, right?
Oh, 100%.
But yeah, we're in an interesting market too. I think the marketplace, you got these high debt rates. Now job growth has slowed finally. We've gotten some measures from the Fed saying maybe there's a pause. Maybe we're at the peak rate cycle of where we're at.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out though. It's like, where do investors go? Like right now, investing in real estate isn't like a cash flow. It's not like quit your job and live on the cash flow of a property.
Not at all.
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Do you find, and I'm just curious on boutique hotels and your case, is the cash flow in this market, how are you finding it still, or or is it more challenging? Because almost everyone I've talked to is saying the cash flow has just been light on everything, you know, and obviously debt market's not helping.
Yeah. So with the hotel stuff, we're buying underperforming assets and we're adding a ton of value to them.
Okay.
And so while we're adding a lot of value, where we're renovating these properties, we're typically buying them on like short-term loans, like bridge loans.
Okay.
So we're paying high interest rates. And we're also shutting down these properties until we renovate them and then we rebrand, relaunch them. And then once we stabilize them, then we can refinance into some permanent debt.
Cool.
And so really until we refinance into permanent debt, there's not gonna be a ton of cash flow, right? But once we refinance a permanent debt, these properties, yes, there is good cash flow because we're playing with deals that, you know, 7, 8, 9% cap rates versus multifamily right now, especially in Southern California, which is 3, 4, 5% cap rates, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to see a little bit of cash flow, which is good. But generally speaking, while we're renovating these properties, there's not going to be cash flow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And whether the investor likes that or doesn't like that, you know, that's just part of the upside in the future.
Yeah.
And
But that said, like, you know, for these investments, a big chunk of all the proceeds that when we do these deals, a big chunk of that is derived from the equity growth that we force.
Oh.
Right. So we go in 2x the value of the property and we create all that appreciation. We do a cash out refi, cash flow it, reap the tax benefits. And then sometime, let's say we do a 10-year hold, sometime by year 10, we'll look to exit for another nice gain. However, if we can meet that 10-year projection early, like let's say year 7 or 8, for example, we'll look to exit early, you know.
Okay.
But I just want all the investors to know going in, hey, like this is a 10-year time horizon.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. And this is probably a great market to even flip, you know, I'd imagine some of if you raise the value high enough, I mean, do you just look to sell the thing too? Or not generally?
It's
do you
not
like to hold?
It's not our first exit strategy.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because, you know, it takes a lot of time and effort to find these deals, especially the good ones. And, you know, it takes a lot of time and just a lot of workload to renovate these properties and then to operate them. And so it's like for us, like, I don't want to do all that work and then just give it back.
Yeah.
You know, and I also believe there's going to be a ton of inflation over the next 10 years, organic inflation and organic appreciation. So obviously right now we're in a tightening environment. However, you know, if I'm a betting man, I feel like inflation is going to run wild again over the next 10 years. And so I want to be able to capture that, you know, especially since we're buying good assets and good locations. I want to be able to ride that organic wave, you know. And if you look at a lot of the wealthiest real estate investors on the planet, they didn't get wealthy by buying and selling.
Yeah.
They got wealthy by buying and holding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I love the 10-year strategy because I agree. It can get painful at times holding everything because you're always cash outflow and or finding new investors to invest. So same thing in storage, very debt heavy investment. But I always tell like my goal with our storage portfolio is to group 30, 40 of them together.
Wow.
Because then the multiple, you know, you can reduce the cap rate on all of them when you get all those facilities underneath one roof. You know, you can get a few $100 million of storage. Your NOI, your return on your cap rate ends up being, instead of a 6 exit, you can exit at a 4 because life insurance, they love the automation and the easiness of storage. So, and we're just kind of creating a niche, you know, more or less my companies are just a vertical of that. And I like the boring stuff. I don't know why.
Yeah. So for a new investor out there, maybe it's someone listening to this podcast right now, and they want to get into self-storage, what's 1 or 2 things that they should start with first?
As far as like the investor as an LP or the investor that wants to go out and like
not
do
a
this
limited
himself?
partner. They want to go do it actively.
So, I mean, obviously we're in a I would call us a down market or down. I don't know how much further it goes or if it goes back up again, but I'd say 50% are on pause. You got to have an outreach program to get to those people and like see if they're willing to sell. But make sure before you do that, I don't know how many are opt to do just seller financing. There may be some, but you might overpay by a significant amount if you're going to do that. Why don't you make sure like your capital's correct first? And if you don't have the money, make sure you can find the money and then go and chase the deals. But I think there's always deals out there. There's 10,000 baby boomers wanting to retire every day. So these deals are coming available. It's just, well, we're in the biggest transfer of wealth in history right now.
We are.
I mean,
the
it's
next 7
happening.
years.
Yeah. You and I are trying to capitalize between hotels, storage, and I'm buying multifamily if I can find the right deals. And I'm just trying to hold everything. You know, as painful as it can be at times, just holding everything. It's always cash outflow, but I think you hold through this appreciation of the next decade. I don't know. I sure feel like inflation's going to be around for a minute too.
Dude, I agree with you, man. I mean, I think the next 7 years, we're going to see the greatest transfer of wealth in American history go down. There's 40 million baby boomers that are going to be retiring between now and the next 7 years. It's estimated that 25% of the boutique hotels out there that are 10 million and under are owned by these baby boomers. And I'd imagine in the self-storage space, a good chunk of those self-storage facilities that are 10 million and under are owned by the baby boomers as well. And so it's like, for all the folks out there that are jumping in right now, whether it's self-storage or boutique hotels, like there's a huge opportunity, and the opportunity is now to learn this stuff so you can, capitalize on this event that's occurring.
Yeah.
This is the biggest transfer of wealth literally in American history. It's about to go down. So people on the sidelines right now, like wondering if, there's bad news out there in the marketplace, wondering if they should jump in or maybe it's too risky. I'm like, no, like you need to learn this right now because this is about to go down. And if you want to participate in it, like now's the time. Hey guys, real quick, the only way the show grows, the only way we continue to bring on bigger and better guests is if you guys rate, review, and share the show. So if you could take 2 seconds or the click of the thumb to review on Apple or Spotify, it will mean the world to me. But more importantly, we'll be able to reach more entrepreneurs and more real estate investors and help them build wealth through this podcast. Now back to the show.
Yeah. And just think about it too. Like I was reading this morning, like the amount of dry powder on the sidelines right now is like, I think 2.5 trillion in worldwide. That's a lot different than it was in 2008 in the financial crisis.
Oh, totally.
There's so much capital sitting out there. What do you think is going to happen to that capital? Right now, they're earning 5% plus 6% at a bank or a high yields like accounts, or buying a bond even. You can buy a 10-year bond at 4.5% today. It's like they're going to sit on there. But at some point, it's going to all flip over. And I think that's just the difference between 2008 and now. There's just a lot of dry powder on the sidelines.
Yeah, I agree with you. And some folks can't buy right now. And, think about all these folks out there. I mean, I was just out in Houston. I was interviewing Robert Martinez, the apartment rockstar. He just foreclosed on a $51 million multifamily deal.
Wow.
So think about that, $16 million of investor capital gone. He's not in a place to go to his investors and raise money right now. Right. And so there's other operators right now that maybe they didn't get foreclosed on, but they're not giving or they're not paying out distributions. They're not in an environment to go raise money.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's more dry powder on the sidelines. And then you have all these folks that are, watching the news and they're terrified.
Yeah.
That's more dry powder as well. Right. But, I think in a time like this, yes, you need to be more cautious. You need to be more selective on in terms of what deal you buy. Like for us, we need to buy at a heavy discount and we need to be able to buy stuff in great locations to where we can add tremendous value. Like the days of buying turnkey stuff and, letting the organic appreciation do its thing over 2-3 years and have a nice exit, those days are over.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think nothing pencils really good right now, right? Like nothing. Not with this debt market. And I don't think anything is going to pencil for a little while. And I think it's just going to keep accumulating cash. And at some point, you're going to have to buy something. And if you're not risk adverse, obviously you have some risk. You're an investor. You know how to add value to places. It's like most people that are watching this probably aren't willing to go try to find a storage unit or find a boutique. They're thinking about it. They're like, hey, when I get to this point or I get that much dry powder stacked up that I can actually go buy it myself, then I'll go do it. It's like there's going to be more deals done with zero cash. I think it's going to be, seller finance, creative financing, that type of thing. That's the only way deals are going to get done because this younger generation just doesn't have the money to buy it. There's just, shit, you can't even afford a home nowadays if you're going to leave college with a student loan debt. It's like $500,000 house is going to cost you $4,000 a month. They just can't afford that. I love like your post about like the salary increase. You know what I mean? Like you talk about the median household income and it just hasn't changed that much.
It hasn't. It hasn't. And that's why I think, like folks out there that are doing what we're doing, or any of the listeners out there that are listening to this podcast, it's like, dude, investing into real estate and starting businesses, that's the path.
Right.
So I guess I'm curious for you, like, how does one go about educating themselves in the self-storage space if they want to become a self-storage investor? Because I know, there's a ton of education out there and masterminds in the, not the boutique hotel space, but like multifamily, short-term rentals, boutique hotel stuff. There's not a lot. Like we have a boutique hotel mastermind, but I think we might be the only like official one.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like in the self-storage space, how does one educate themselves? Are there podcasts out there? Are there masterminds? What's the best path?
Yeah, I'd say if you're going to educate, like AJ Osborne does a great job.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
He does.
he
huh?
does a phenomenal job. I'm educating myself with his stuff all the time. I mean, he's talking about, honestly, there's not that many pieces to self-storage to really understand. There is a lot of detailed information to know, but just make sure, like, I mean, whether you follow me, I talk about storage all the time, and I'm, constantly updating myself with the markets, but
And speaking of that, I encourage all the listeners to go follow Mark on Instagram at Marc Kuhn MAK.
yeah.
But obviously you're putting out content and self-storage stuff. I know AJ's doing it, but does he have a mastermind?
I think, yeah, he's got some classes that Brett Arneson and AJ Osborne are kind of together.
Investor Girl Britt. Shout out to Britt.
Yeah.
We're actually going to do a podcast soon.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So she'll be here. They talk about storage a lot. I think they do a phenomenal job, and that's probably the best place to learn. There's definitely a few books out there that, you can get on Amazon and find. And storage is much easier to understand, I think, than maybe, say, apartment units or hotels. It only gets more sophisticated after that. And I suggest everyone, probably follow AJ Osborne. Unfortunately, I'd love you to tell myself, but I think he does a better job than I do. That's out of transparency. I mean, he is involved. He's been involved with it for 20 plus years. That's what he lives and breathes. So I think he does a good job explaining and educating others within
Where do they invest? Where does AJ invest?
So he was in Boise, like Idaho area. And so like, I think that surrounding area, but now I think they're in a handful of states or 10, 15 states. They're kind of buying facilities all over the US.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it's a good model. He does some development as well. Not many developers are going right now. We're probably one of a few in the Midwest. I know some people still in the South here building in California and Arizona.
Yeah. How long does it take to like develop a self-storage facility? I mean, you got the permits, entitlement, all this stuff on the front end, right? And
Yeah.
I bet that it depends on what city municipality you're in.
Yeah. It's much easier where we're at.
Yeah.
I can get zoning changes in a couple months done and have a permit in 3 months.
Wow,
right?
that's quick.
Yeah. So where we're at.
So you can buy the land and be shovel ready in inside 4 months.
Yep.
Wow, that's so quick.
And you could be built in 6 months, stabilized in a few months.
Okay.
So, we'll call it 12 to 18 months. You can, from the time you find the land, to fully built out. And
Where do you guys bring in the materials for this? It's just like a bunch of containers, right?
Yeah. So there's a few different ways to build them. And of course, depends what steel prices are. Sometimes we use lumber if that seems to be, because again, our units are a little bit larger. But typically the smaller self-storage ones you see, they're just like steel beams. They sell them almost as kits. And there's lots of vendors that'll help build these things. And they just go up so fast. I mean, some of these sites, they can be 45 days and you can have 100,000 square foot storage facility.
Wow.
With a gate.
Wow.
And there's construction crews that just go around the US and literally pop site after site. And we use a software. I know we were talking demographics before and some of that, but like Radius Plus, that'll tell us like how many units per capita, what's the median income. It'll tell us every demographic that we need to know about that market. So like Radius Plus is like an expert tool for just self-storage. It'll tell you how many permits are in that area coming on board.
So give me some metrics that you guys look for when buying self-storage in a new market.
Yeah. So if it's an existing unit, you always look at median income and population growth, like you were talking about. Make sure it's a growing market, because typically you're going to be overpaying. You're still in a market where sellers still don't want to come down.
Yeah.
They still want what they wanted 2 years ago. And so, really those are the key ones before you're even going to look at a market. But then, just see, like, can you add some value? Are the rents under market? Or, you got street rates, which are what the REITs would call, I was kind of talking about this before, where they drop rates by like 50% just to fill the units. And then you have market rates. Well, there's a lot of fluctuation in these areas, like markets that got flooded with self-storage. Geez, the rents were 200 and now they're 80. So they're trying to navigate how to actually excel the appreciation, increase revenue on these units. But those are really, I mean, we use Radius Plus, like I said, and its demographics. Literally look for population growth, look for a reason to add value to the unit, whether you can add automation, reduce the management. Because these mom and pops, they don't want to deal with they're probably keeping track of this on a spreadsheet, right? Like, those are the best when you get the financials on a spreadsheet, because then for sure I can add value here.
Right. So, and you mentioned you look for X amount of units within a radius. What is that threshold that you guys like to see?
Yeah, it's units per capita is usually how you dictate it. And it's hard. It's a moving item based upon what market you're in. I can't say there's like a specific number that you want to see units underneath, but
Okay.
like it really depends on the population growth, because you could look at a units per capita in a market and be like, wow, there's way too many units here. But then the population growth is 4%. Well, you're probably in a territory market, like an outside market or a suburb market, and it's like the numbers are all skewed. So you really have to do research in that area
Gotcha.
and look at the population growth and then just kind of compute your numbers together. So it's hard to say just a certain percentage.
Gotcha.
But it's definitely a big one that everyone talks about. What are the units per capita? I mean, that is like one of the biggest keys.
Yeah. I'm curious, like on a sales comp approach,
Yeah.
like how do you guys, 'cause I know on multifamily and hotels where I was like, oh, what's the price per door? What's the price per unit? What do you guys, is it price per square foot? How do you guys price out these comps?
Yeah. So I was a multifamily guy for, years before I even hit storage. But yeah, everything switched cost per square foot. So it's, yeah. What is the cost per foot? What's the market rental rate? So like as a developer, we can go into a new area and be like, okay, can we build for $100 a foot and can we rent for 150? You know what I mean? So like, we just know it's like, no, the comps are like 110 rental per square foot and build costs can be 130. Okay. Math doesn't work. Move on. And because some different areas cost more to build in, more regular, we're in a northern climate, so we're just going to call it, it's expensive to build up there because we live on soil that we literally have to have footings and floors and more building. Well, if you're building in Arizona, you just pour a slab and go. So the cost per first square foot, you can be cheaper.
Sure.
So everything's per square foot. You just convert it.
Yeah.
Which is different coming from multifamily or boutique hotels.
Yeah, that's easy. So how did you get into self-storage? Like what were you doing before this?
Like my whole story was like, I'm just a concrete guy at the end of the day. Like, and I got converted when I started my construction company 13 years ago. Basically, I kind of like my story goes that like I was a concrete guy for the first 7 years of my business. That's all I knew. I grew the company to, about 15 to 20 people, but I was only there. Everyone was reliant upon me. So I ended up going through I had like the good old fashioned, concrete life where I had like 6 coffees and 4 monsters a day. It's like
nice,
not a healthy lifestyle, we'll call it. And, it just got to me because I was the do-it-all man, and I was the best concrete finisher. I was the business guy. I was doing the estimates. I was taking care of the accounting. I was just trying to do it all. But it just wound up, anxiety ate me up, and my wife would tell me that the sheets are yellow on my side of the bed. I wouldn't sleep. I just I think when you go into business, you don't realize, I was just engraved in this, and I ended up winding in the hospital at the end of the day. And when I was in the hospital, I just kind of realized like, hey, if I don't really have a business, because like without me, those guys, they don't know what the hell to do. Like you might as well just fold shop and I'll just be another business down the drain.
Sure.
So, and then I started getting curious, like how the wealthy, like I was making money as a contractor. Of course I was doing everything. I was working 100+ hours a week, but I never knew how to keep any money, and then, little guy named Grant Cardone started jumping around on my phone, either listen to me talk or whatever it was. But he made me curious about real estate because he was kind of the only one preaching it probably at that time, at that level.
Sure.
This was probably 2018, 17 area. And so I got super curious I was like, I need to start making money while I sleep. And, just listening to everything Grant Cardone would say, some debatable topics. But I ended up I was in his first mentorship class in 2019. So I flew down to Miami and I just got, he had a first mentorship group. There was like 30 of us in it. And I just learned a lot from him. And he's like Cardone Capital at that point was like his real big push. And then he was telling us all the reasons why, and his business, is great, but he'll never let go of any of the real estate, So then the curiosity just opens up, and I was like, all right, I got to figure this out.
Right.
So then I started just doing verticals. I started developing my own real estate and holding it. And so, and started even buying it. Like I started getting curious. I bought my first office building. It was 1.1 million. And I I like didn't sleep for a week, like up to, well, it's like, I didn't know, like I've never bought in any real estate. So it's like, that was a lot of money to me to take out a loan for 900 grand and put 200 grand, it was just scary.
It's always scary. Yeah. The first one's always scary. And then you get a little more confidence, and then the next one's scary, and then you get a little more confidence.
Yeah.
And it's I hear you, man.
It's
all part of the journey.
It literally just like, it felt like at that point, it's just a roll of the dice. Like I just didn't know, like, okay. And then you buy it and the loan closes and it's like, okay, nothing changed other than I got to pay this loan, but all the tenants are making the loan. I was like, this really does work.
Yeah. All right.
How simple of a process that I held up myself.
So you did some multifamily stuff. You bought some office.
Yep.
And then how did the self-storage come to fruition?
Yeah. So I think I realized through multifamily, I had a property management company. And so I had a couple hundred units that we were managing, and it was like, we just didn't have enough to support a big management group. And then it was turns and property managers trying to keep everyone happy. We just couldn't do it. We couldn't keep just property managers in general, just in our area. So my wife and I decided she was going to be the property manager, and it just consumed all my time, all to make, 5, 6, 7% of whatever net revenue was. So it just found out it wasn't worth it. Like, it was a lot of work. These Class C and B apartments. So it's like, you just got tenant issues. Like, I don't want to deal with these people's issues. It was consuming my time. So we got into multifamily more and more. And then I realized, we're not going to do property management anymore. And then converting, I realized that storage, once we started building some of it, and I just took a swing with storage, these bigger storage units too, because no one else has been doing this. No one has been doing a climate controlled large storage unit without a bathroom or drain or something else. You see these nice condo shops with bathrooms, and it's like maybe a couple cars and then the loft. And that's not what this is. This is literally a boring self-storage unit. It's just bigger and it's climate controlled, and they all leased up like right now. I'm like, I was like, well, that one worked. Let's build another. Boom, filled up again. I'm like, I was like, this is working. And then we built 3 more, and it's like, those are filled, we just built those last year. They're already 90+%. So it's like, man, let's go do this again. And so we're doing another brand new facility in Fargo, North Dakota. That's about $5.5 million. So we just kind of, you got a proof of concept now, and now, investors understand it. We put them in demographics with higher net worth, maybe next. And here's what you got happening too, is these strict HOAs. Most HOAs that are strict, they don't let you even park in the driveways. They're not letting you park a boat. They're not letting you park anything in the driveway. Like, you got to keep it clean, and these storage facilities are just taking bank on that. And the big storage facilities like mine are taking in those guys. And so that's what's gotten me curious about doing more luxury storage, and why I've really enjoyed it, I guess. I like that it's really boring. It's really easy to run. I don't have to do the property management. I have to deal with the tenants' problems. There is problems, right? Like some, but most of it can be automated.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, brother, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, man. It's been a pleasure connecting. I'm very inspired by everything that you're doing on the self-storage side. How can listeners get in touch with you if they want to learn how to invest with you?
Yeah. So we have a company called MAK Capital. We let investors invest right beside us in our storage facilities. Also follow me, marc.kuhn.mac. Sure, we'll link below or something, tag this. And I have an email that I've been working on real hard on Follow the Herd, where I actually break down the deals that I'm doing. It could be the self-storage deals. It could be how I'm seller financed. I've bought in different apartment deals, and I get access to the investors. So it helps, show them how I'm doing the deals, right? Like, and you can do this too. I'm just literally, so I have an email that goes out every Saturday. It's got 2,700 subscribers on that. So it's a really close following, and you get to watch my journey.
I love that. And if I'm ever in North Dakota, man, I'll have to hit you up. We'll connect.
Yeah, you must be real lost if you hit North Dakota. But if you want to see what a goose down feather coat is like, come on up.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, my man. He's Marc Kuhn. I'm Rich Summers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.